listener production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you and welcome to The Briefing. Australia's music scene is looking like it'll be getting a boost with big incentives for international acts, but there's a growing threat putting our festivals at risk. As more gigs get cancelled, is the real danger something we just can't control?
I've been to events where the heat is so oppressive, it's not what one would normally think of in an Australian summer. It's to the point where I'm hiding away under shade.
Helen Smith's deep dive is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Chris Spiru this Friday, the 9th of May.
Morning, Tara. Happy Friday. Morning to you listening and to the brand new Pope of the Catholic Church.
And there it is. The bell is ringing.
On day 2 of this conclave, we have a new Pope.
Yes, white smoke has this morning billowed out from the Sistine Chapel, with 69-year-old Robert Prevost now stepping into Pope Francis's shoes, becoming the 267th Pope of the Catholic Church. He is the first American to be appointed to the role and will be known as Leo XIV. Tara, what else do we know about this Pope who has just been elected?
Well, we know that he was born in Chicago to parents of French, Italian and Spanish descent. Now, as a child, he served as an altar boy and he was ordained as a priest when he was 27, but in 2015 he was made into a bishop of Peru, then promoted to archbishop and made a cardinal in 2024.
Yeah, in his first words as Pope this morning, he spoke fondly of his predecessor, Pope Francis, and he's thought to be someone who will continue in his footsteps, having shared his views on migrants, the poor and the environment. We've also heard from a bunch of world leaders this morning who have already sent through their congrats, including Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky, France's Emmanuel Macron and Russia's Vladimir Putin.
Changing pace now, more than 30 people have been arrested over a number of homophobic attacks linked to dating apps like Grindr and social media in Victoria. Police allege a group of young males were luring other men, then beating them and robbing them, with some of the attacks then filmed and posted to social media.
The attacks have been happening across the state, including in areas like Manningham, Casey, Hume, Moorabbin and Knox, with the arrests made over the last 7 months. The ages of those arrested range from 13 to 19. They've since been slapped with a range of charges. Police say the investigation is ongoing and are warning others that making a complaint on a social media app is not enough, as it doesn't automatically get sent to police.
Meantime, in New South Wales, the Bondi Junction stabbings inquest, which has now been underway for 2 weeks, has heard attacker Joel Couchy's voice for the first time in body cam vision that was played to the court. Now, in it shows Couchy's brush with police about 15 months before the attacks, when he's actually pulled over for erratic driving.
Well, City Road Police, and what's with you driving, mate?
Someone driving.
Yeah.
So what happened?
I'm describing it as very erratic and unsafe.
Separately, then, another police officer who visited Couchy's parents' home in 2023 also spoke at the inquest, and he was saying that he was called to attend the property because Couchy had assaulted his father for taking his knives.
Joel Couchy's dad had taken the weapons out of concerns for his son's mental health, with his mother also adding she was worried he was hearing voices. The police officer described Couchy as having a hard-on for his knives, and when he asked about his mental state, Couchy said his schizophrenia medication had side effects and he reckons his life's better without him.
Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price has quit the Nationals Party to instead join forces with the Libs, who are continuing to figure out who their new leader will be, with Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor and Deputy Leader Susan Ley still the current frontrunners. Now, the Senators put out a statement saying that she wants to bring back core Liberal Party values and is eager to fight for the best interests of all Australians as part of the coalition.
Now, this is an interesting move. Not all of the Liberals are happy about it, saying she has MAGA Trumpish politics, which she has rejected, by the way, on the record. She has rejected that multiple times. But her jumping ship has led some to ask whether the Libs and all the Nationals would consider a merger at a federal level. That didn't go down too well. National Senator Bridget McKenzie replied saying, "Over my dead body."
Oof.
So for context, the two have a coalition, meaning they have an agreement to work together, but they are not a single party.
Yeah, so that's what sparked that up. Now, there's a bit of upset going on, obviously, between that friendship and a bit of disagreements over who should have more sway now that the Libs performed so poorly at the election and the Nats, on the other hand, managed to retain their numbers. Anyway, we should know who the Libs' new leader and deputy leader are at least next week, as they're electing them on Tuesday. Meanwhile, Labor's holding their caucus to decide its new front bench today.
To Moscow now, where Australia's defence pact with the US and UK has come under fire, with Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, saying AUKUS is fueling a regional arms race. The comments were made in a joint statement following a meeting between the two, who have promised to deepen their military ties and stand together against neo-Nazism. Xi Jinping touched down in Moscow yesterday for a World War II victory parade he will attend today, one of several celebrations marking the defeat of Nazi Germany across Russia.
And like we mentioned a few weeks ago, these parades are the reason that Russia actually announced its 3-day ceasefire with Ukraine that is technically in effect now. And a reminder, that is a unilateral ceasefire that Ukraine never agreed to, the terms of which have already been breached by both sides.
Yeah, and just before we go into the next headline, if you're scratching your head a little bit confused about how AUKUS is fueling a regional arms race or how someone could actually form that view, I actually did a deep dive on this back in March. I'll pop the link to that in the show notes.
And wrapping up today's headlines with some feel-good Friday stories for you. We'll start with Matildas captain Sam Kerr, who's announced the birth of her son Jagger. Yay! The star striker and her partner Christy Mewers sharing the news on Insta last night to their collective 2.2 million followers, writing, "Our little man is here, Jagger Mewers Kerr." So congrats to the beautiful couple.
Yes, that is great news, and hopefully we get ourselves a football star. I mean, the odds are all in this kid's favour. Both are incredible players. And in some surprising news, Microsoft's founder, Bill Gates, says he's planning on giving away 99% of his fortune over the next 20 years. The 69-year-old, who's worth around $112 billion, says he's determined to not die rich, with the money being sunk into his foundation, hoping to end preventable deaths of mums and babies and lifting millions out of poverty.
Oh, I love that. I mean, why do people have to wait till they die to do this, though?
Fair
Look,
point.
and sticking with money, a man from northern New South Wales is $30 million richer this morning. Having won last night's Powerball, the Cessnock man pocketing the entire jackpot. And when he got a call from the lot, his first words were, "Holy shit." Fair enough reaction, I think.
Yeah, honestly, I was trying to rack my brain of how I would react. Tara, I'll be dead honest, I'd probably pass out.
I'd be one-way trip to, I think, Europe, Bahamas.
You wouldn't rock up to work the next day, Tara Cassidy? How very dare you? Hey, someone who probably would rock up to work the next day is Helen Smith, whose deep dive looking into the silent killer of Australia's music scene is coming up for you next.
Hey, it's Helen Smith here with this episode of The Briefing. The Australian music scene shapes a lot of our culture, whether it's legends like Cold Chisel or up-and-comers like Amel and the Sniffers. We love live music. And as international acts slowly start flooding back in, the New South Wales government has announced that international artists who book Aussie acts on their tours will get a discount of up to $20,000 on venue hire across the state. And it all sounds great, with Kendrick Lamar and Doechii set to headline Spilt Milk Festival this year. But there's a new silent killer of our music scene: extreme weather.
Falls Festival goers have been asked to leave as there are serious fears for their safety.
Splendour in the Grass 2024 has been cancelled.
Yesterday's cancellation would have hit really hard.
Cancelled just a week before it was due to start.
Over 47 festivals have been partially or fully shut down.
Punters evacuated, with fears extreme conditions could bring fires, smoke, strong winds and tree hazards.
New research from Green Music Australia found 85% of punters experienced extreme weather at a music festival in the past 12 months, with conditions forcing gigs to cancel at high rates, including the 2019-2020 Black Summer bushfires and more recently Cyclone Alfred, which led to the cancellation of more than 26 live music events in just 1 week. Berish Bilander is the CEO of Green Music Australia. Berish, can we really blame extreme weather for Australia's dying music scene?
Look, it's a complicated picture. There's lots of things are at play here. Certainly post-COVID, there's confidence in whether events will go ahead, but undoubtedly, if you've had 50 festivals cancelled since 2015 as a direct result of extreme weather, that's eroding that confidence further. And that's exactly what our report is showing. 85% of people have experienced extreme weather. And it's just a matter of time before it reaches 100% because we're seeing it pop up everywhere, whether it's floods in the New South Wales or Queensland, or it's dry, full-on heat that's suffocating people down in Victoria. Like, the climate predictions are very much saying we're in for more and more extreme weather events, and particularly outdoor gigs, are really vulnerable.
And I'll get into some of those human impacts a little bit later. But firstly, how do you classify extreme weather? What's the difference between being hot inside a tent at a music festival to battling extreme conditions?
There are scientific measures in place when it comes to extreme weather. But what we've done with this poll that we've put out is actually asking people how they feel, what they class as extreme weather. And we've given them some prompts. So we've said, are you experiencing heat above a particular point in time where it's oppressive, above 40 degrees? Are you experiencing rained out shows? Are you experiencing fire in the near vicinity that's causing the show to be cancelled? So there's some kind of extreme weather as far as the fans themselves are concerned. And certainly I've been to events where the heat is so oppressive, it's not what one would normally think of in an Australian summer. It's to the point where I'm hiding away under shade. I think extreme weather, as far as the audience is concerned, is one that makes it intolerable to actually attend the event. If we look at the cyclone alone that recently hit the northern part of Australia, well, not even that north, around the Brisbane, Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast area, that knocked out 25 plus gigs in one moment. And the science is really clear that we're going to see more of these events. And so we need a more resilient sector that can handle these bumps. We need government to do everything in their power to actually mitigate the worst effects of climate change, because every 0.1 of a degree matters when it comes to extreme weather.
One of the biggest examples that a lot of us might have seen across social media would have been Splendour in the Mud. It was dubbed that a few years ago. Was this just a one-off, or are we seeing more events being severely impacted at such a large scale?
It certainly wasn't a one-off. That's a wonderful framing. Splendour in the Mud, it lent itself perfectly to that brand. But just moments later, I think it was maybe 6 months down the track, we had Pitch being cancelled by extreme heat, and that caused a huge controversy because ticket holders didn't really fully understand what was going to happen. Despite Pitch's best attempts to communicate, they were so unsure themselves because the emergency services weren't able to clarify the conditions and whether or not they should be cancelling. So it's far from over, and we're really seeing these cancellations continue month by month, year by year. They're growing in number, and I think that's what our data's pointing to. We interviewed over 1,000 people, and these people are really starting to reconsider whether they can buy a ticket, whether it's safe enough to buy a ticket.
Yeah, and we have seen a lot of music festivals being cancelled or postponed over the last couple of years. And we know that some state governments have been handing out hundreds of thousands of dollars in what they're calling live music lifelines. We are in a cost of living crisis, and some critics might say that we need to be focusing on bigger issues. What do you say to that?
I'd say it's all related, like 100%. Politicians need to be doing everything they can to ease the stress on people to pay the rent, the food bills, the mortgage, whatever it might be. But music and arts and culture generally isn't like a nice to have. This is like what helps us have an identity, what helps us get through hard times, what helps us feel alive. It's kind of the stuff that makes life worth living. And I don't think government support should be an optional situation in this case. Where exactly the money is targeted and who's the beneficiary of it is a different conversation entirely. But arts practitioners do a wonderful thing for Australian culture, and more people go out to see and listen to music than anything else in Australia. It's an absolutely core feature of Australian life and I'm not talking about a specific genre. You know, some people are going out to concert halls to see classical music. Others are going out to see their favourite rock gig. There's hip hop. There's Indian classical. Like, there's so many different genres that attract different audiences, but it is a core part of our existence. And people want to keep going out to see these acts. And I think the critical thing here is, like, if we continue to have governments supporting things like fossil fuels and doing stuff that is against what the science is saying, the science is really clear. We need to start moving towards 100% renewable as quickly as possible. We need to phase out types of energy extraction that are really problematic, like coal and gas. And we need to enable people to get to gigs by good public transport or ride if at all possible. All those things, like, the science is really clear on. If governments don't do that quickly, we're not going to have music. Like, we're running a campaign at the moment. I'm wearing the tee. There's no music on a dead planet. And it seems trite, but it is absolutely true.
So what are some of those things that you want to see the government really stepping into? Because this isn't just about our music festival and music scene, which you said is really important for our culture. It's about the environment and it's about the planet. How can the government do more?
Well, the first thing the government needs to do is align with the science. So scientists have been doing everything they can, screaming and yelling about the need to move away from fossil fuels. Our energy system is the biggest polluter when it comes to climate. So we need to transition. We have the sun shining across Australia most year round. We have amazing wind. You know, we need to be leaning into these resources. And it's happening, but it just needs to happen faster. And really importantly, we need to stop digging up coal and gas. There's so many musicians getting behind this campaign, whether it's your John Butlers and Missy Higgins or new acts like Ocean Alley, Miss Kanina. They are just so keen to see the government do everything in its power to mitigate the worst impacts of climate and therefore help save our music scene from basically shutting down when it comes to live events. Beyond that, the government actually has a role to play to invest in sustainable infrastructure. So our scene needs to be resilient because some of the climate impacts are baked in. That's why we're seeing already these 50 festivals cancelled since 2015. Some of it is just going to happen. We're going to see more extreme events and we need to be ready for that. And I think the government's got a really key role to play in that.
So you mentioned there kind of these structural reforms. Is that like when a festival has a permanent place or there's places throughout Australia that we know are going to be more sustainable to hold a music festival year and year on?
Yeah, look, it might be helping festivals find places that are more resilient in terms of the climatic conditions. It might be helping build heat shelters or flood-resistant staging. There's a whole raft of things the government can look to supporting. It's not necessarily just about the infrastructure. It might also be supporting fans with some type of insurance scheme or something so that gives them confidence to be able to book ahead, knowing that when Mother Nature wants to unleash something, it might shut down a show.
So what are you calling for from these findings? What do you want Aussies that love going to their local music festival or their gig that want to support Australian artists and want to support the Australian music scene? What can we do?
Look, we live in a democracy and we've just seen that play out with the federal election, but elections are only one moment where people can make a difference. Politicians are always receptive to what their constituents have to say. And frankly, there are millions of music lovers around the country. And I know the vast majority of them want to continue to go see live music for the rest of their life, want their kids to enjoy the same delight in the same concerts that they got to see when they were young. So you need to be letting politicians of all levels know. And that's obviously federal politics, but it also plays out in state politics. It plays out in your local council. All of these levels of government need to be taking the climate crisis seriously because it is really the biggest challenge of our time.
Amazing, Berish. Thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Absolute pleasure, Helen. Thank you so much for having me.
That was Berish Bilander, CEO of Green Music Australia there. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. If you like this app, you can follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this from. It really does help us keep doing what we're doing here at The Briefing. And if you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. We'll be back in your feed with another episode from 4. I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.
Listener.